Good morning once again, my brothers and sisters. Here we are for another Living Hope Today study. Welcome to you. Today, Leviticus 11. Are you ready for 45 verses of clean and unclean? 47 verses of clean and unclean. What's God doing? He's setting parameters for his community of faith to help them understand where they need to be when they approach him, what they need to meet, the standard they need to meet. He's also separating them from the pagan cultures who practice some of the things that God will forbid. We'll see that as we go along, but let's just give it a good go here and see if we can get through it. When you get to verse 1 of chapter 11, the Lord says to Moses and Aaron, notice how both are addressed in this section, say to the Israelites, of all the animals that live on the land, these are the ones you can eat. Okay, that sounds pretty good. You may eat any animal that has a split hoof, completely divided, and that chews cud. All right, those are the requirements. There are some that only chew the cud or only have a split hoof, but you don't want to eat them. No, don't eat them. The camel, it chews the cud, but it doesn't have a split hoof. It is, look at this term, it is ceremonially unclean. God says, don't eat the camel. All right. The coney, though it chews the cud, does not have a split hoof, and it is unclean for you. What's a coney? I think it's sort of like a badger, but I've never seen a picture of one. The point isn't what is it. The point is it's unclean. Why? Because it doesn't meet the requirements. It doesn't have a split hoof, okay, even though it chews the cud. When you want to talk about rabbits, though it chews the cud, it doesn't have a split hoof. It's unclean for you. Don't eat that. Interesting, isn't it? What God forbids. And the pig, though it has a split hoof, completely divided, it does not chew the cud. It is unclean for you. Notice the topic that keeps coming. It's unclean. God says, I don't want you to eat that. You must not eat their meat or touch their carcasses. Okay, now, here's an addition. All right? You cannot eat them, okay. But a carcass is what? It's not alive. A carcass is dead. Okay, so when one of these kind of animals dies, don't even touch it. Why? Because I'm declaring them unclean, is what God says. Okay, well, as the passage moves forward, it says, look, all the living creatures in the water. Oh, okay. Now we're going to talk about fish and whatever's in the water. We talked about animals. Okay, now fish, all the creatures living in the water of the seas and the streams, you may eat any that have fins and scales. Well, that's a whole bunch. But all the creatures in the sea or streams that do not have fins or scales, whether among all the swarming things or among all the other living creatures in the water, you are to detest those things. Sorry for you mussel lovers, you lobster lovers. I think even you shrimp lovers are going to have a problem here. At least in terms of what the Israelite community was commanded. And since you are to detest them, you must not eat their meat. And you must detest their carcasses. Here it comes again. God is distinguishing two things. One is consumption, but the other is touching one of these creatures that is dead. God doesn't want that. Anything living in the water that does not have fins and scales is to be detestable to you. Don't eat it. You don't see fins and scales? Don't make it into dinner. These are the birds. Okay, so we did animals, we did fish, now we're doing birds. These are the birds you are to detest. Okay, wait a minute. So this time, instead of God saying, well, these are the kind of fish you can eat, or these are the kind of animals you can eat, God's going to list 20 birds that you can't eat. What do they have in common? Well, they're meat eaters, almost exclusively. These birds that are scavengers, that eat dead animals and eat meat. No, God says, don't eat them. He doesn't really list birds that you can eat. He just lists birds that you cannot eat, okay? You're to detest them. You're not to eat because they are detestable. Look at this list. The eagle, the vulture, the black vulture, the red kite, any kind of black kite, the kind of raven, the horned owl, the screech owl, the gull, any kind of hawk, the little owl, the cormorant, whatever that is, sorry, the great owl, the white owl, the desert owl, the osprey, the stork, any kind of heron, the hoopoe, and the bat. Don't eat those things. All flying insects. Oh, wow, look at this. So now we're moving into insects. We had animals, we had fish, then we had birds that you can't eat. Well, now we got insects. Let's talk about insects. All flying insects that walk on all fours are to be detestable to you. Well, I think this one's easier for most people to surrender to this command, right? You want to eat grasshoppers, really? There are, however, some winged creatures that walk on all fours that you may eat. Oh, here's some exceptions. Those that have jointed legs for hopping, well, maybe grasshoppers are okay on the ground. Of these, you may eat any kind of locust. Hey, there you go. Katydid, cricket, or grasshopper. There it is. It's okay. Go ahead, eat the grasshopper. But all other winged creatures that have 4 legs, you are to detest. You will make yourselves unclean by these. Okay, so to consume these things, you go into the category of becoming unclean. To touch the dead creatures in these categories is to make yourself unclean. All right, but notice this, you're unclean. You're unclean by touching them if they're dead, but you're only unclean until evening. Notice this about clean and unclean. A sacrifice is not required to be restored if you do something that puts you into the unclean category. All right, we're not talking about sin. We're not talking about atonement. We're talking really about God guarding his community from those things that may be beyond their understanding. I'm sure their science wasn't up to molecular biology like our science is, but nonetheless, God is saying these are things you don't want to eat, and don't even touch them. All right. Whoever picks up one of their carcasses, well, here's how you become clean again. You must wash his clothes, and he will be unclean till evening. Okay, so this one, you pick up the carcass. Okay, well, now you're unclean. All right, so what does that mean? Well, that means wash your clothes and wait until sunset, and then you're okay. You're going to be reestablished into the clean category. Every animal that has a split hoof, not completely divided, or that does not chew the cud is unclean for you. Whoever touches the carcass of any of them will be unclean. So to handle a dead body of one of these animals is to put yourself into the unclean category. Of all the animals that walk on all fours, those that walk on their paws are unclean for you. So now we're changing from hoofs to paws. Don't eat the ones with the paws. Okay, for whoever touches the carcasses will be unclean till evening. Again, the same distinction. Don't eat them. If they die and you see their body, don't touch them. That's what God is saying. All right, verse 28. Anyone who picks up their carcasses must wash his clothes. They'll be unclean till evening. They are unclean for you. So notice, again, sacrifice is not required to reestablish status before God once you've touched that dead carcass of that forbidden animal. All right? They'll be unclean till evening. That's it. Okay? They are unclean for you. Of the animals that move about on the ground, these are unclean for you: the weasel, the rat, any kind of great lizard, the gecko, the monitor lizard, the wall lizard, the skink, the chameleon, all of all those that move along the ground, these are unclean for you. Whoever touches them when they are dead will be unclean. Again, the time frame, till evening. All right. When one of them dies and falls on something. Okay, now we're going to change the topic again. This time, It's going to be what one of these dead animals does touch. Okay, you don't try to touch that animal once they've died, but they touch something of yours. Who knows? Maybe the mouse on the shelf dies and falls off into your bowl. Okay, what do you do? All right, when one of them dies and falls on something, that article, whatever its use, will be unclean. Whether it's made of wood, cloth, hide, or sackcloth, put it in water, it'll be unclean till evening, and then it'll be clean. Okay, so we have the category here to say we have a way to restore our utensils or our dishes or whatever might have been polluted by coming into contact with a dead animal. If one of them falls into the clay pot, oh wait, if it's a clay pot, something's different. Everything in it will be unclean, and you must break the pot. So whatever germs, disease, disaster a dead animal in the pot might cause is going to be mitigated by the fact that you're going to break the pot. Any food that could be eaten but has water on it from such a pot is unclean. Any liquid that could be drunk from it is unclean. Anything that one of their carcasses falls on becomes unclean. An oven or a cooking pot must be broken up. They are unclean, and you are to regard them as unclean. Look at this, all this unclean in these verses. What's God doing? Well, theologians debate it, scientists think about it. Why would these things be considered hazardous in terms of God's establishing them as unclean? Well, most land on the topic of health, that if you're unaware of the biology of all these things and you just keep drinking the soup after you took the dead mouse that fell in there out, you have exposed yourself to tremendous risk. Disease is rampant. Some of these animals are carriers, right? God is basically removing his people from the risk of illness through coming into contact with dead animals. A spring, however, if the mouse falls onto the spring, or a cistern for collecting water, it remains clean. But anyone who touches one of these carcasses is unclean. Here it comes again. If a carcass falls on any seeds that are to be planted, it's okay, they remain clean. And that kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Because, you plant a seed of grain in the ground, it has a long time to recover from coming into contact with something dead before, it's not going to get polluted by that. All right? But if water has been put on the seed and a carcass falls on it, in other words, if the water on the seed allows the seed to absorb the disease or the decay of that animal, it is unclean for you. Again, what do we see? Clean, unclean, clean, unclean. What's God doing? He keeps going with different things. If an animal that you're allowed to eat dies, and anyone who touches the carcass will be unclean till evening. Think about that in terms of the sacrificial system, where the priest is killing animals that are allowed to be eaten. Again, unclean comes into play just because they touched it. Anyone who eats some of the carcass must wash his clothes. He will be unclean till evening. Anyone who picks up the carcass must wash his clothes. He'll be unclean till evening. Unclean, unclean, unclean. Every creature that moves about on the ground is detestable. It's not to be eaten. I think we're talking about snakes and reptiles now. You're not to eat any creature that moves about on the ground, whether it moves on its belly or walks on all fours or on many feet, like a little salamander or whatever you might imagine. It's detestable, God says, if it's crawling around on the ground. Don't eat it. God says, don't defile yourselves by any of these creatures. Don't make yourselves unclean by means of them or be made unclean by them. And here it comes, that verse or two that summarizes what God's doing here. I'm the Lord your God. Consecrate yourselves and be holy. Why? Because I am holy. That's why. In other words, be set apart for me. Do not make yourselves unclean by any creature that moves about on the ground. And just to bring some emphasis to the point, In verse 45, I am the Lord who brought you up out of Egypt to be your God. Therefore be holy, be clean, be set apart for me, because I am holy. We read further before the chapter ends. These are the regulations concerning animals, birds, every living thing that moves in the water, every creature that moves about on the ground. You must distinguish between the clean and the unclean, between living creatures that may be eaten and those that may not be eaten. And hey, guess what? As a New Testament Christian, you can read Acts chapter 10. Peter's confronted with a sheet of unclean animals coming out of heaven. He's told to eat. He says, no, I can't eat. These items have been forbidden. I don't want to be unclean. The sheet comes down 3 times and it's withdrawn. But the point gets made in Acts chapter 10. All foods are now clean. So the New Testament modifies what happens in Leviticus chapter 11. Those people that say, well, I can't eat pork now because the Bible says, you can't eat pork. Well, we're not to despise them. We're supposed to embrace them still because this is not a fundamental issue to our faith. Nonetheless, the clear teaching of the New Testament is these regulations regarding eating clean and unclean animals are taken away in the New Testament. There it is. 47 verses, chapter 11, clean and unclean. The point, God is holy. The point of the whole book, God is holy. How can we meet the standards that he has set to be in his presence? God bless you, church. Serve him well today.
Who is it who for sinners shed his blood, and now for cleansing all can plunge beneath that flood?